Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 17th regular business board meeting. Welcome to all of you. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Copeland to introduce you.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. Before I introduce the orchestra, sort of, the group orchestra, just a word. Our internet is out in the building, so some of the materials that normally you could get through board docs won't be able to receive. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce Mrs. Kehoe here. Where's Mrs. Kehoe? She's here. Who's representing the administration at Marion Elementary School? Mrs. Kehoe?
Good evening. We're going to start with our students first, and then I will give a little bit of a background and some information, and then our students will play again. Thank you for providing us the opportunity to share some information about our elementary ensemble music program at Marion. Tonight, there is a group of young musicians who are members of our 5th grade orchestra representing Marion Elementary. This group is led by Mrs. McCarrick. We are so fortunate to have a school community and district that is supportive of the musical experiences available to our students. At each of our school-based concerts, we always marvel at the level of performance the 4th and 5th graders demonstrate. We know that the elementary experience is shaping a foundation for the students as they continue to excel at the secondary level. At Marion, similar to our other elementary schools, we have 3 ensemble groups: chorus, band, and orchestra. Students in the 4th and 5th grade elect to participate in these groups and begin rehearsals in the fall, one morning a week before school. Currently, membership in our combined band is 98 students, and our 4th and 5th grade orchestra has 65 students. Over 75 students are also participating in chorus. This evening, it is a pleasure to introduce Mrs. McCarrick and the members of the 5th grade orchestra who just performed Linus and Lucy and will now perform Canon in D. The songs featured tonight, students have been practicing and will perform in the March concert. We hope you enjoy the performance, and on behalf of the Marion staff and students, we wish you a happy holiday season. Thank you.
Outstanding.
That was really fantastic. Thank you so much and that really shows us a fabulous music education program and all the teachers and students who participate. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, we're
Got
gonna.
two great demographic reports coming up.
Yeah, so we're gonna let all of the students and their teachers and their parents, if anyone's welcome to attend the rest of the meeting, but we'll give you a chance to head out just in case that wasn't part of your plan. In addition, we're going, before we do the demographic reports, we're going to hold audience recognition first. And audience recognition is for action items only. That allows us to hear people speak before we take vote on issues. However, it's my understanding that we have some high school students who are here who would like to speak to us. So before we do the regular, before I open it up to anyone in the public to speak on any action item, I will open it up to students only who would like to speak on any issue of concern to students. We'd like to hear what you have to say, and then you're more than welcome to attend the rest of the meeting as well, but we want to give you the opportunity to speak and hopefully go home and get some sleep. So if you are a student who would like to speak on any, they're already signed in. Okay, so if the students could come and sort of line up who would like to speak. Again, this is only for students. And after that, I'll open it up to any public participation on action items only. So, Ms. LaPera, do you want to start calling?
I'll read the first 5 names out. Valentina, Noah, Ben, Marshall, Eli, and then we have Michael, Zeke, Ben Feldman.
Okay, so what we need you to do is come up. You have to speak into the microphone so that you are on videotape. And then if you could just tell us your name and what school you go to, and then we generally have a 3-minute limit. Since there's so many of you, if you could stick to that, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, good evening. My name is Valentina Spadia. I am the Student Body Vice President at Harriton. I'm here this evening, along with a lot of my peers, in order to address the name change of our annual fundraising event, previously known as Mr. Harriton. Just so that everybody has a little background on this amazing event that is student-run, we fundraise over $30,000 for multiple charities, including the Lower Merion Scholarship Fund, which helps our peers go to college. So this is a really special event that not only sponsors school spirit and fosters a real sense of school community in a school that sometimes struggles to really get motivated to be passionate about going to Harriton. We really come together that night, and we feel that the process of the changing of the name has been very unfair because the student body was not allowed or given the opportunity to really debate this issue. The student body is simply not in favor of the name change. There have been polls, it has been communicated to me and my fellow student council officers as I am speaking on behalf of myself and the president, Lauren Levy. We agree with the idea of inclusivity. We embrace the idea that everybody should feel included and welcomed in their school community, but infringing on the satirical nature of what this show started out as is truly infringing on the idea of inclusivity, because this show is a satire. It is mocking how beauty pageants oftentimes objectify women, and it's really highlighting the oftentimes misogynistic pieces of our culture. So, in changing the name, truly, that satire will be changing. I was told in multiple meetings with my school's administration, headed by Mr. Weinstein, that I should put a smile on my face and act complicit in the changing of the name, even though I had expressed on multiple explicit conversations that I simply disagreed and that my constituents disagreed, because I was elected not to puff the resumes of the people above me. I was elected in order to express the opinions of my peers, and my peers who are brave enough to come here tonight and stand in front of all of you who have all of this authority. I believe that leadership is truly showing that your morals are the most important thing. And we were met, instead of open dialogue, we were met with a predetermined and evidently solidified decision, whereas this should have been an opportunity for open dialogue where the student council could truly express the opinions of the student body. And even if tonight you decide against us and force this change, at least it's coming after all of our voices have been heard, and we really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Noah Salmonson, Narberth. Hareton High School. We're here tonight to represent the 95% of students who do not believe that the name of Mr. Hareton should be changed. Many could not make it because of tests, quizzes, homework, but wanted to be here. The reason we are here is that our own administration has refused, time and time again, to engage in a public and civil discussion of the matter. Note that not only have our administrators refused to engage in public, they have also denied new names to the show without reason, such as Dr. Hareton and Hareton's top model. When student council asked, they were met with no means no, no reason provided. The word ram, as in the school's mascot, was banned from any new title because, quote, ram is a male sheep. The ram is and has been the mascot of Hareton High School, and no one has complained about it because of the fact that the Rams are male. We call ourselves, regardless of gender, Rams in terms of sports and clubs and activities. Because of all this, we've come tonight to speak about the issue, which was, as an administrator put it to us when we first heard about the story, spurred on by someone at the district level. Many other students will go into detail of the show, its origin, what it means to the school and the community, and why changing the name is such a bad idea. We know the district wants to see more diversity in the show itself. However, changing the name achieves nothing. The first Mix Hareton will star 10 male contestants. It should also be noted that at Lower Merion, a girl has won Mr. LM, and was totally fine with her being called Mr. LM. Simply put, the students of Hareton who aren't trying out because something deters them. It's because either they don't have the time or have no interest in it. Simply put, changing the name does nothing. This event is the last remaining part of school spirit Hareton has left. We don't show up to sports games. We don't support other people in the same way that this show does. And something that members of the community will remember far after their high school experience is over. Is the winner henceforth going to be called Mix Hareton regardless of their self-identified gender? If a male wins Mix Hareton, don't they have the right to ask to be called Mr. Hareton since that is their preferred prefix? Following that reasoning for a moment, all 10 contestants this year, as I've stated before, identify as male. Thus, no matter who wins, they will call themselves Mr. Hareton, we can assume. And shouldn't the name of the show reflect that this year? If you are not able to pick which name you prefer, isn't that just as bad as the issue you're trying to fix? There are many questions that administration has been unwilling to answer up until this point, saying, quote, it's not a discussion. As you can see tonight, there is a discussion to be had, students willing to have it, and our administration has failed us in allowing to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. Next speaker.
Hi all, my name is Ben Newman and I am from Hareton High School and a contestant in this year's Mix Hareton. When administration reviews an activity under school jurisdiction, there are a couple questions they are likely to ask. The first is, does this event intend to harm community members? The answer in Mr. Hareton's case is no. Mr. Hareton does not intend to harm community members. Mr. Hareton is an 11-year-old charity show with the concept of male students in a beauty pageant, essentially a satire on masculinity with dancing and costumes. It was meant to bring together the community and does just that. It's the only school-wide event that sells out our entire auditorium. Administration would conclude that the event was not intentionally harmful and that any harm done was not intentional. The second test is that can we find a sizable community, minority or majority, that perceives that they are adversely affected by this event? In U.S. justice, however, there's nothing about how someone perceives an event. It's about the intention. When we change valuable events, because people perceive harm, someone's feelings and perceptions become the law, regardless of the event's intent, and completely ignoring its positive impacts for our community. Granted, this is not entirely true in all cases. We have an obligation to better our community and to change our ways if a sizable minority or majority perceives that they are hurt by this event. But there are no communities of people that perceive that they are adversely affected by this event. While administration is changing this event largely because they perceive female students are disenfranchised by the name Mr. Hareton and do not have equity of access as was formalized in several policies that expect inclusivity, it would seem that there's not a sizable majority or minority of females that feel hurt by this event or like they don't have fair and equal opportunities to participate. Furthermore, groups to protect vulnerable minorities like the Gender and Sexuality Alliance don't agree with the name change. So, You're picking an argument not on intent, but on perception of not the majority, but a mystery minority, not advocated for by student leadership who are women or minority advocacy groups like the GSA. You picked an argument that and then made it a mandate, and you are expecting that teenagers will do exactly what you want them to. Anyone have kids? That tactic surely doesn't work with me. There was not enough assistance convincing, including of enough stakeholders, and administration has reserved the right to opine on every name decision and promptly rejected most of them. But in all of this, doesn't administration have better things to do to strengthen our community? How about the epidemic of juuling among high school kids, reversing years of anti-smoking campaigns? How about our building, which was built of inflexible cinder block? Can I finish? Nope. Inflexible cinder block.
Finish your sentence, please. Thanks.
Two little group workspaces for the innovative, collaborative, and ever-changing world of 10 years later. Administration used this time in Mindshare instead to fight for 8 years to change the name of an event that was not intended to hurt anyone and has no sizable group that feels hurt.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Marshall Worth. I'm also a senior at Harriton High School, and I've never spoken at one of these events before, but I really think that the things that have been going on with our Mr. Harriton event are worthy of everyone's attention. I'm actually less concerned about the actual name change, and I'm a lot more concerned about the process by which the name change has occurred. Through conversations that I've had with numerous people, student council officers, here's what I've gathered. Harriton administration declined the proposed names, as was earlier mentioned, Dr. Harriton and Harriton's Next Top Model, but opted not to provide any reasoning, instead only restating that the names were not approved. Those names were produced by student council, which also happens to run the entire event, and student council correctly advised the administration that the student body would be unhappy with the change, but the administration showed little care. So just to reiterate that, our student council officers who were elected by the students to represent the students told administration that the students were opposed to this change, but the administration didn't seem to care. Why do we even have a student council if its inputs are only considered when administration conveniently agrees with what it's hearing? Our school promotes respect, but is this really the respect that our students deserve? Because I don't feel particularly respected when 95% of students, as shown by an HHS TV poll, oppose what is happening, but it keeps happening anyway. I think it's important to remember that with no students, it's a student-run event. There's no show in the first place. Why pretend that our voices matter by having a student council if in reality it's a sham whose opinion is not legitimately taken into account? This is a fundamental lack of awareness and lack of care for the student's opinion, which completely defeats the purpose of having a student council. The way that it's supposed to work is that when 95% of students are comfortable with an existing president, especially if it's a president that's been wildly successful by any measure, nothing really needs to change. Instead, the show's popularity, which does a lot of good, it results in thousands of dollars for Lower Merion Scholarship Fund, is being jeopardized in favor of political correctness. What is more important to our administration? Gathering as much money as possible to help kids go to college, or flexing its muscle by bypassing student leadership to make a change that is not representative of the student body? I find it offensive that students' opinions aren't really valued and that our student council officers and our friends were blatantly ignored and not offered a justification as to why. We all hope that something will be done to ensure that students' voices are heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker?
No, Eli.
Eli, then Michael, Zeke, Ben, Jacob, Davis, and Lindsay.
Hi, I'm Eli Feldman. I'm a freshman at Harriton. And many of the people that you have seen talk tonight and that will talk tonight are seniors who have gone through Harriton knowing that their show was called Mr. Harriton, and this would be the first year that the name would change. Since I am a freshman, although I have seen the show previously, almost all of my peers in my grade have not. And going into Harriton this year, by far the most anticipated event was Mr. Harriton. Now, changing the name to Mix Harriton, many of my peers in my grade have said that they would not attend the show based on the name change. Now, I know that this is not true of all the grades, but one of the most, or the best way that Mr. Harridan gets most of its funds is through ticket sales. Now, if we were to cut ticket sales based on the name change, that would be taking away money from charity over a name change which 95% of the student body disagrees with. Based on this change, this would create many cuts to charity, and I don't think that it's right to go against 95%, the majority of the school, and cut money towards charity just to include a little bit of the population. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Michael Becker. I'm a senior and I'm a contestant in this year's show. At Harridan, unlike typical high schools, our biggest event isn't a football game or a dance. It's Mr. Harridan. For 11 years, Mr. Harridan has shined as Harridan's prize social event, raising money for charities and bringing the school together. Around mid-February, you will start to see a large line of people flooding the hallway, willing to sacrifice their lunch to have the opportunity to buy a $15 ticket for the show. Students are tasked with listening to the announcements to see how many tickets are left, because chances are that if you didn't wait in that outrageously long line the day before, there won't be a ticket for you the next day. But this year could be different. Throughout the past week, I've approached my colleagues and asked them their thoughts on the new name change. All of the responses I received were along the same lines. Why and how? Why? We had an extremely successful show that raised over $30,000 and drew support and unity within the community. As my father says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. How? If you have a 95% majority that includes the student government, how could this change possibly happen? Through Facebook messages, online petitions, alternate name suggestions, the students have tried to work with administration, but the students have been blatantly disrespected and told that their opinions don't matter. This is very frustrating as a contestant. For one reason, we won't be getting the support of our classmates and friends after all the hard work that we will have put forth. But the most concerning issue is the money that is going to the Ronald McDonald House, American Heart Association, and Lower Merion Scholarship Fund. No one will want to buy the new t-shirt with the non-binary pronoun mix in front of Harridan. The people want the iconic Mr. Many people I have talked to expressed their displeasure and said that they might not even go to the show, let alone buying a t-shirt. It's a matter of school tradition and pride. Do my classmates and I have school pride at the moment? No. Our leaders have turned our back on us and chose to hinder with what we value most. The name change isn't the only difference from this year and past years. This year, our students are more united than ever before. The real question is, will we let the opinions of the few dictate the many? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Zeke Milrod, and I'm a senior at Harridan High School. At Harridan, I wear many hats. I'm a student, a mixed Harridan contestant, and an ally of the LGBTQ+ community. All of these roles are equally important to me, and they each contribute to my belief that Lmsd should support the Mr. Harridan title. First and foremost, I want to articulate that I embrace the value of inclusion. It is imperative that students throughout Lmsd feel safe and secure. However, protection should not come at the cost of a meaningful learning opportunity. Striking the Mr. Harridan label without student input, or even knowledge of the decision, robs the Harridan community of a relevant dialogue concerning inclusion. Rather than teaching students a valuable lesson, the abrupt name change has spurred a whirlwind of animosity and anguish at Harridan. Students that oppose a shift are left feeling underrepresented and inconsequential. Conversely, the few that endorse this change are siloed in their own view, the administration depriving them of any dissenting opinion. Regardless of your view on the matter, both camps have been left in the dark during this ordeal, including our student council. the administration's shortcomings in updating the Harridan community concerning this change underscores the importance of dialogue in this matter. Generally, any cultural shift rests on the strong backing of a community. Evidently, Mix Harridan lacks this crucial support. Maintaining the Mr. Harridan title in conjunction with cultivating a discussion surrounding this controversy is pivotal to fostering change. On the other hand, erasing a cultural fixture is damaging to the Harridan community. Furthermore, the decision to strike the Mr. Harridan title runs contrary to the core values of the Lower Merion School District. According to the district's mission statement, Lower Merion School District strives to ensure that all students achieve their highest level of critical thinking. Rather than encouraging unnecessary exchange regarding this shift, the administration has deprived students of agency. In essence, adopting the Mix Harridan title not only spurs animosity in the community, but opposes the very foundation of Lower Merion School District. Thank you for your time, and I urge you to keep the Mr. Harridan title.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was.
I have Ben, Jacob, Davis, and Lindsay.
It kind of went out of order.
It's okay. You just need to give their name.
It should be on another sheet. Hi, I'm Christelle. I'm from Harridan. I'm a junior. And I'm a member of GSA, and I was one of the few who spoke with Principal Weinstein and Mr. Ferguson about the name change. And our concerns weren't mostly with the change itself, but just why and the process. But the reason why I wanted to come forward to the board today was to more so focus on what happens after Mr. Harridan is over. From what we understood from the meeting, the intent of the name change was to provide inclusivity and representation for certain members of our community. However, certain members of our group believe that there are other ways, plenty of other ways, in Harridan and in the Lower Merion School District community that you can make non-binary and other gender-conforming and identifying people more comfortable that don't have to do with the name change. We were a bit confused, mostly with Mr. Harridan being the first big event. We thought that it kind of missed the mark of making fun and parodying female beauty pageants and tried to make it into a problem that didn't exist yet. I understand that administration did not want to reveal who came forward about their discomfort with the name, but it would have been nice to have been disclosed some number or at least a figure of who. But as far as we know, we haven't met or encountered anyone who has supported the name change, at least the ones from my circles and affiliations. So the only thing that I wanted to come forward to the board is, after Mr. Harridan, if the choice to change Mr. Harridan's name is completed, what are other ways you will help the LGBT community feel safer and more represented that have nothing to do with superficial things like a name? How do you, and that goes beyond bathrooms, but language, teachers, how certain curriculum is discussed, how certain groups such as SAGE or GSA are protected and made sure they are kept away from administrative decisions that have nothing to do with them, because we have been getting quite a lot of backlash, GSA particularly, I can't speak for SAGE, about a name change that we had no part in. Not to blame or point any fingers at you guys, I know you probably had the best intent, but we do believe that there are other ways and probably better ways to make us to make a certain part of our community more represented. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you very much for your comments.
Hi, I'm Sarah Cook. Sorry if I talk fast. I have a lot to say. Okay. As someone who is in the LGBT community and someone who is active in seeking justice for those who are oppressed and to utilize my privilege as a means of laddering marginalized people, I've spent a lot of time dissecting this topic. And while I applaud Lmsb's awareness and attempts to fight for our community, I don't think they know as much as they think they do about these issues. But while they still might be ignorant, they are definitely not as ignorant as some people in this country and in our world. The fact that we are able to create gender-inclusive policies like Policy 259 is incredible, and I'm very thankful that those attempts are made. But the changing of the name Mr. Harriton was, in my opinion, a step in a sideways direction. Now, while I do in no means represent the community as a whole, it's not like I stand alone in this opinion. I have extensive conversations with other women, people in GSA, which I'm a part of, and people in SAGE, and while I am yet to find anyone who has ever been offended by the name Mr. Harriton, that doesn't mean that those people don't exist. I'm not discrediting those who feel a certain way based on their identity, and I understand why a crowd of vocal students might overshadow those who are largely ignored. The issue is when a policy is hurting more than it is helping. I myself and many others in GSA have felt minor targeting as a result of this decision. It seems like the blame is continuously cast on us because we are the ones who would have had a say in a decision like this, right? But we didn't. No one asked our opinion and no one consulted us. Mr. Weinstein said that this is because we are only a small portion of the community and this decision is bigger than us. But where they messed up is not recognizing the fact that this starts at us and it affects us. This policy is meant to stand for those who have been silenced. This decision in its rawest form is supposed to be benefiting those in the LGBT community and women in general. But what happens when those groups don't agree and none of us had a say in it? At the end of the day, the name is not the biggest issue, but the idea behind it. While the change alone may seem harmless, the admins are too short-sighted to understand the wider and far more significant consequences of fixing something that isn't broken for a cause they don't understand. Mr. Harriton is a satire on female beauty pageants. The entire point of it is to make fun of the objectification of women in these pageants. The essence of the show is taken away when you pretend you're being socially conscious for wanting to make it gender expansive, because that's not the point. I'm not saying that women shouldn't be allowed to audition. In fact, I think that every year the entire student body should be refreshed on the essence of Mr. Harriton, the rules, the audition process, and the purpose for new students. These things are usually spread through word of mouth, which is a breeding ground for rumors and false information. Most people don't even know that women can audition. That needs to change, not the name. I think that the people who were offended by the title had no actual idea of what the event was about. On the surface, I can understand why it might seem sexist, but understanding the event and understanding the events and the roots of its conception is more important than the name change. I understand that this is bigger than me, but as I said, it starts at the LGBT community. We are the grassroots of these issues, and no one knows better than us what it's like to deal with it at Harriton.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Good evening, members of the school board. My name is Jacob Newmark, and I am a senior at Harriton High School. To me, Mr. Harriton is about students taking initiative. What everyone seems to be forgetting amongst the name change is the dozens of students who work thousands of collective hours putting on a great show. From the art, choreography, music, stage management, lighting, sound, and Harriton TV crew, there are many, many opportunities for students across the school to be involved, regardless of gender. Further, the entirety of the student council is responsible for selling ads and raising money for a good cause we support. And at the end of the day, that's what Mr. Harriton is all about, raising huge amounts of money for local and international organizations while entertaining and bringing together the student body. You would think that an event with the empowering message of community and charity would be championed. Instead, it has seen the opposite. Rather than opening a dialogue with members of student council and members of the GSA and SAGE clubs, offering concerns, our officers, 4 out of the 5 of which identify as female, were told not only that they had to change the name, but council officers were told to act as though it was their idea in the first place, citing that it was the right thing to do for the community. Essentially, they were told to mislead and deceive their fellow students into thinking the change is something the student body wanted. The question of whether all students may participate as contestants simply isn't one. Everyone is allowed to try out. The greater culture of the student body, however, still remains that the show is a satire on beauty pageants, which is why so many passionate students take charge in arguably more prominent roles of organizing an event of such magnitude. In fact, 95% of students who responded to a poll said that the name should not be changed. Many students are here to speak on that fact. Their opinions and ideas were ignored and disregarded. The greatest victim of this situation is the charities that the funds are raised for. The competition is an institution in the greater Lower Merion community, with some local businesses sponsoring the event for over a decade. Not to mention the sharp decrease in ticket sales as a result of the student body who threatened to boycott the event as a result of the name change. Who is going to make up the $30,000 of charitable donations if this event fails? And is it worth pillaging a beloved tradition and fundraiser in the name of public perception? Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is also Jacob. I'm from Penn Valley. Living in such a politically divided time, and in a time where teenagers such as us have been more active in our community and in politics, it is very disappointing that there was an utter lack of student involvement in making this decision. As a junior last year, I got the pleasure in participating in the show Mr. Harridan. The build-up and anticipation was remarkable. Everybody was pumped to see the show, and the lead-up was just energizing. Everybody was excited. But this year, there's no anticipation, only disappointment. A sudden decision like this has stripped the students of their voice, and that is unacceptable. Although this controversy did do something that no basketball game or football game or school event has done, it has really brought our student body together and increased our school spirit. Over the last few weeks, the student body has tirelessly worked to reverse this name change in a way I've never seen in 4 years at Harridan. Between creating petitions that have gained hundreds of signatures, as well as lobbying students to come here, as you can see, to this meeting, this is the greatest culmination of school spirit that has taken place in the last 4 years, and that should be rewarded. I urge you guys to consider helping us out with this and keeping the name the same. It truly is a great tradition.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Michael DeBaton. I am a senior at Harridan as well as a contestant in this year's show. The show, formerly known as Mr. Harridan, is a lot of fun and very entertaining for the audience. However, we forget why the show even exists. For charity. Every year the amount of money has increased, and this past year we raised over $30,000 for charities such as the American Heart Association, the Ronald McDonald House, and most importantly, the Lower Merion Township Scholarship Fund. The Lower Merion Township Scholarship Fund awards grants on a financial need basis to graduates of Lower Merion and Harridan High Schools for post-high school education. This includes funds for colleges, universities, vocational, technical, or business schools for up to 4 years or 8 semesters, all according to the Lower Merion School District website. Last year, the Lower Merion Township Scholarship Fund awarded over $125,000 to 115 students from both high schools, including a Mr. Harridan contestant, Alex Wu. Having a new name would diminish all quality of name recognition and would make it difficult than ever before to gain support of local businesses, as they may not know what the show is. As Ben Newman of the Harridan Banner said in his op-ed, as well as another speaker tonight and a Mr. Harridan contestant, historically, women have participated in all aspects of production in the show as partners to the 10 male contestants, but not as contestants themselves. If this is the new standard, where does it end? Do we need to change boys football to protect girls who may want to play on the team? Do we have to change girls volleyball to protect boys' Title IX rights? Changing Mr. Harridan's name has many implications that we as a community need to consider. The intention of changing Mr. Harridan's culture to encourage female contestants is only valid if it is shared by the student body. The school missed an opportunity to teach a real-world lesson. Cultural change happens with conversation and collaboration between the government and the governed, not through issuing ultimatums. Throughout the process of this name change, administration at our school has said they are fine not having a show if the name is not changed. It is not about the show or the name, but the money that is donated to the needy people in our community, and Mr. Harridan is one of the largest ways to help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Lindsay Sayer. I'm a senior at Harridan High School. And I'm here to talk to you today about my thoughts on the Mr. Harridan name change, as the rest of us are. And I've thought about this a lot, maybe too much, because I feel like people have so many different interpretations of what they believe is right and also essentially what happened. Here's some thoughts I'd like to share. In May of 3 years ago, I came to talk to you all about passing Policy 259, which protects and gives rights to trans and gender nonconforming students in the district. As you know, that policy was adopted by a unanimous vote by all of you. And from that day on, there has been many improvements in favor of equality for students of all genders. The use of this policy for that policy for educating teachers about LGBT plus Q+ issues, and most importantly, acquiring gender-neutral bathrooms, which the LGBT community at Harridan and other schools are so grateful for. As one of the presidents of Harridan's GSA, Gender Sexuality Alliance, I have talked to our approximate 20 members of the club, and we all agree that changing the name of Mr. Harridan to something you, as Mr. DePaul said, as in us, believe is more gender inclusive is not what we want. I don't believe the name should change because the narrative of Mr. Harridan is to create a satire of female beauty pageants. The show is open for all genders to audition. However, every year this event has gone on at Harridan, and there have only been male contestants so far. This show purposely pokes fun at stereotypical gender roles, and the sold-out audience enjoys every second. Members of GSA and SAGE met with our principal, Mr. Weinstein, our athletic director, Mr. Ferguson, and our student council sponsor, Mr. DePaul. They talked us through the process of changing the name and why we think we would have wanted this, and we adamantly told them no. They assumed without consulting the students that it would positively affect us. Specifically, we were told that they were doing this for us, that we would like this. And as people before me said, that this is not how this played out in school. While Harridan administration decided to change the name, we will never truly know, and I think that's a part of the problem. Furthermore, because the greater majority of Harridan believes the name should stay the same, administration should work on fixing far more important things that are actually broken. Specifically, the exclusion of LGBTQ+ subject in health class. 2 years ago, what we did in my health class was, all others to go over, 2 years ago, what we did in my health class, and all others to go over the topic of gender and other sexual orientations other than straight was to watch and take notes on a 15-minute TED Talk. Maybe some were moved by this acute example of understanding those who are LGBTQ+, but it certainly was not. And my LGBT friends in health weren't either. I believe you should shift your focus from something so insignificant as a letter prefix of an event to something that will affect students at our schools in a real way. A way that will make your children more comfortable with themselves, more understanding of the other people different than yourself, and aware of the fact that you can be whoever you want to be. You know, when I see students passing me at Harridan, I wonder what their story is. Like, what's holding them back? Are they grappling with who they are and maybe need some guidance? You have the opportunity to answer all these questions. I even know some seniors at Harridan, at this liberal and exceedingly accepting school, still hide who they are from their parents, families, and friends. They are afraid of the unknown, so create the known and make some changes we actually need in LMSD. As Dr. Eveslag said in a kind-hearted email to me after I spoke at that board meeting my freshman year, we undoubtedly have a lot of work to do as a school, a community, a country, but knowing that we have people like you leading the way is inspiring and encouraging. You instill confidence in me that progress will continue.
Thank you very much.
It's a good lead-in. I know that Dr. Everslide has been working with the building administration on this, so I'm going to ask him to fill in some of the pieces.
Thank you, Mr. Copeland. I'd like to start by thanking and sharing my appreciation for the students that came out this evening to express their opinion. We know this is an emotional matter, and we always appreciate a welcome student voice. The event itself, Mr. Harrington's been a very popular event. It's been a very philanthropic event. It's been very well attended. It's been very much a part of the Harrington traditions. We certainly acknowledge that. However, I disagree with the notion that the move to change the name to Mr. Harrington and Mr. LM has been a sudden directive from the administration that's been absent collaboration. I can share with you, I had 4 wonderful years at Harrington. From 2012 to 2016. From the moment that I arrived in 2012 at Harrington, there were discussions around the competition. There were including discussions about concerns around the competition, stereotypes, negative stereotypes that were about women in particular that were being reinforced by the competition, and suggestions about the name change. In each of my 4 years at Harrington, I engaged students in the student council and student leaders in ways to make the event more inclusive. The event was undoubtedly entertaining and popular. It was questionably inclusive. And there were some aspects that I applaud the student leadership for making some revisions to the program, making revisions to some of the language around the program and some of the roles of students in the program. There was, however, resistance to name changes that were being considered. Regarding the specific name changes that you suggested for this year, my understanding from the administration was other names other than Mix Harrington are certainly open for consideration and acceptable. I have received no indication that Dr. Harrington or any title with RAM was being denied. I certainly will follow up with Mr. Weinstein about that. I also offered this year to engage with students in this conversation, and that offer still holds true. But I will say that norms change over time. Societal norms, district norms, policies, community sensitivity changes over time. Entertainment standards change over time. Pageants change over time. And even acceptability around satire changes over time. There have been entertainment venues that parody certain subgroups in society that were at one time considered acceptable that now are no longer considered acceptable. As we have changed as a district, changed policies, broadening our policies around inclusivity, furthering our commitment to being an inclusive and accepting school culture through our strategic plan. We too have revised policies and our norms have changed, and we feel as if it's time for us to move forward with the change, not only to the name of the event, but looking at ways that we can work with students to make this as inclusive as event as possible. One reality of the Mr. Harrington competition, which I think we shouldn't be proud of, is we've never had a female contestant. And that should not be representative of who we are. I don't think it is representative of who we are as a school community. And I think it's something that we should collectively be working to change. That said, I also have enormous confidence in the student leaders at Harrington and the building leadership at Harrington to not allow a name change to derail the success of such a popular philanthropic event. I know that the school community, the Harrington community, and the broader community are incredibly philanthropic, and I have every bit of confidence that they will continue to put together a wonderful event and one that the community gets behind to support the philanthropy that we stand for.
I just want to say that I think the board as a whole is very, first of all, stands behind our policies to promote inclusivity. And we also stand behind the strategic plan, which is our desire to ensure that there's student voice. And so I think that we, encourage the administration at Harrington and students to continue dialogue. I think there's always room for improvement around continuing dialogue. I think there's also room for improvement to thinking about the way the curriculum, for example, one of the students said, needs to better reflect inclusivity. I am frankly, and I'll say this personally, I don't want to speak on behalf of the entire board, but I am concerned that students who in general are known for promoting sort of gender equity and inclusivity are receiving backlash about this. The fact that they're receiving backlash about this makes me think that there are issues that really do need to be discussed in the community, and that people need to consider that that a name change is promoting backlash among women and probably men as well who support gender inclusivity. So I think these are really important issues. The board does not actually vote on the name change. That's not a board decision. But I do think we will encourage the administration and students to work together, as Dr. Eveslag said, to ensure that we can have both the most to keep moving towards inclusivity, to recognize that that's a constantly evolving thing, and at the same time, to continue to promote student voice. And we obviously have a lot of very articulate and passionate students, and we're happy to see that. So I think, unless you have anything else, then we appreciate everybody coming tonight and expressing their concerns around these issues. At this time, we have public comment for anyone, could be students or anyone who would like to speak on action items only. So at the end of the meeting, if anyone would like to speak on any issue, you're more than welcome to come do that. At this time, we're just asking for anyone who would like to speak on an action item. That way we're able to get feedback on anything we're taking a vote on tonight. So if there's anyone who would like to sign up to speak, again, please, just on an action item. At the end of the meeting, we'll take public comment on any issue. Thank you. We're happy to take comment on any topic at the end of the meeting, but right now, I'd like to just take public comment on any item we're taking a vote on this evening, so that people have that opportunity, so we can hear people's feedback before we take the votes. Is there anyone who would like to speak on a action item? Okay, I don't see.
Our internet is down. I did make some copies of the agenda.
Okay, so at this time,
At this time, we've got the presentations.
Yes, we actually have the presentations. I'll turn it over to you.
All right, so as members of the board and the public are aware, in this time of growth in the district, we have been commissioning two separate demographic firms to work mostly independently so that we can triangulate our figures. I'm going to ask for them to present tonight. I believe first up is, I think it's MCPC is first, are they?
Yeah.
I believe they are. Look for presentations. Oh, yes, MCPC, Montgomery County Planning Commission is up first.
Oh, so should we do Sundance first?
Well, isn't that MCPC there?
It is, but he's not here. Would you like
Oh,
to
he
start?
left. Okay.
He just stepped down. Would you like to start with Sundance?
I guess we'll start with Sundance.
Well, I don't know why this
Here he
is...
comes back.
Guys?
Hold on, let me shrink this down. I don't know why this is giving me a hard time tonight. Okay. I don't know why this is doing this. Okay, cancel. I don't know why it's not. We're gonna have to call the guys, I think.
It won't let you go if you do slideshow at the top.
It's not. I'm doing slideshow at the bottom. See?
From the beginning?
Hmm?
From the beginning?
Yeah. Ah, there you go. Right, you got it. Thank you. I should have let you do it.
You're fine.
I don't know why it's like
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Dan Farina. I'm a county planner over at the Montgomery County Planning Commission, and my division was contracted to produce an update to our original study in 2015 and our subsequent updates in 2016 and 17 for these total school enrollment projections. There we go. Okay. So just to give you a little background of the history of our previous findings, our original study in spring of 2015 projected 1,248 students over 10 years through 2024-25 school year. Option 2 was the study that the method that we chose in that one. The next year, we came back and did an update through 2025-26 that projected about 1,042 new students. And then last year, we came back and did another one, and that one projected 918 students over 10 years through 2026-27. This current projection that I'm going to discuss later on is through 2027-28. Growth was anticipated based on several factors. One was a continuation of larger recent classes. Another was popularity and reputation of the district. More families are choosing public school over private school compared to the past. There was an increase in expected residential construction, especially multifamily projects. More public students coming from older apartment units in the district. And lastly, an increase in housing sales activity with a larger net result of incoming students. So first up, I'm just going to give you a little overview of the district enrollment's history. You can see that that yellow line is the total K through 12 enrollment over the last 10 years. It's been a fairly steady incline upwards with a few years of stability and or plateauing. But what I think is the most stark about this graph is that you can see that between 2009 and 10 and 2015-16, there was a large percentage growth in the number of students in K through 5. This represents essentially what we would call like an enrollment bubble or an enrollment wave, which will carry through the rest of the system over the next however many years that it's there. You can see now in the last couple years, as enrollment in K through 5 has largely stabilized to a degree, that 6 through 8 has been the primary growth driver. And this makes sense given that those K through 5 grades are now moving through the system into 6 and 8, and that you're starting to see the increase in 9 through 12, and we'll likely see a greater increase going forward. Basically, what I want you to take away from this is that, unless you keep adding more students, especially at the youngest ages in kindergarten, first grade, and such, above what you've already seen as your highs, you're not really going to see continued enrollment growth coming from the lowest grades, which is how you would have consistent long-term growth. So one of the variables that we consider when we look at your model and just trying to figure out why we're seeing such high growth is private school enrollment. For instance, you can see that private school enrollment since 2000 has gone down considerably, nearly 1,200 students. This is according to the census. In 2000, that represented 38.7% of all school-age children within the district. Today, it represents 27.3%. So it's a declining percentage of the amount of students within the district who are going to private school. The Lmsb bus data also loosely confirms that as well. Even though that not all students will choose Lower Merion School District bus service to private school, this shows that generally the trend is downwards for those that do. Another thing that we talk about too are the housing impacts. This is probably the most
interesting and impactful part of our model as we actually do factor it in to the overall model. So the biggest takeaways from this are just that multifamily provides the fewest school-age children, while single-family detached usually provides the most. These ratios are what we apply to all new developments and their units to get a impact likely from public school students. So you can see that we break it down from existing and new units, and this study was done using 2010 census data. This is the most recent 100% count that we do have. Lower Merion doesn't differ too much from the overall county in terms of its ratio of students per existing units. Single-family detached has slightly more, while attached slightly less, and multifamily largely mimics the rest of the county as well. However, what I will say about Lower Merion School District is all of these figures are attributed to that study. While we've observed, though, within Lower Merion, using our own analysis, a slightly higher amount or ratio for students coming from existing units, on an average around 0.10. So these are the housing impacts I was talking about, multifamily analysis specifically, as this is the dominant form of development that we do see within the district. You can see that it's gone up pretty much every year that we've recorded it or done the analysis, all the way going back to 2006-07 school year, which only had 249 students. Today, now 582 students come from all of your existing multifamily developments with 20 units or more, so your largest developments. However, though, this is still an effective decrease from the year prior, which was the peak that we saw at 614. And we have more units, too, this year that go into this this pool of units that we're drawing from. So it actually affected the student ratio. It went down to 0.093, roughly one student for every 10 units. We can see that in the graph below that the number of students coming from multifamily housing with 10 to 19 units, so some of your smaller apartment buildings, more neighborhood apartment buildings built between the 40s and 60s, most of them, are holding steady at 531 units, but the increase is slight for the amount of students coming from them. Thing is that it's not a large percentage of your units, so it's not the biggest impact that it could have, but it's interesting to know that some of your smaller multifamily buildings are actually driving growth in multifamily existing housing. And then lastly, you'll see that there's the most recent multifamily developments that we break out, and we also figure out how many students come from those in a given year. So these are all updated with the most recent years. You can see that the Maybrook, which was just completed last year, has about 30 students coming from it out of 250. So it's a decent size or a decent ratio of students coming from that. This is typically higher than we see in most school districts from new development. Most new development doesn't exactly appeal to, or isn't trying to appeal to family groups, but Lower Merion is unique in the sense that it is a very highly regarded district, and people will do a lot and put up with certain living situations they may not in other districts to send their kids to Lower Merion schools. Another aspect of housing impact is sales activity. So we do something really interesting. At the county, we have a 100% address-based sales list. And what we do is we compare rosters to that sale list to figure out how many students are coming into the district versus how many are leaving in a given year. There's only 1 year in the 6 years that we actually tracked this, so over the last 10 roughly, that actually went down or had a net decrease in the number of students as a result of sales. Most times you'll see an increase. Last year in 2017 we saw 54 more students added to the district as a result of this what we call housing churn, or just sales and movement of families in and out of the district. The year before was a high at 132. So what's interesting though is that for the most part, since 2013 at least, the number of students coming into the district every year is pretty consistent between 300 and 350 students. However, the number leaving varies widely. So again, Lower Merion is a high choice district. People really want to come into it, and there's a significant, consistent number of students coming into the district through sales every year. And just for your own edification, you can see there's a graph at the bottom there that shows how many sales there have been over the last 10 years. Lower Merion, unlike a lot of other districts, is actually seeing sales that are punching above some of their recession highs. Now, if you go back further to 2004, 2005, you've had even more sales than what we're recording at this 2017. But this is a significant turning point in terms of turning back essentially from the recession 10 years ago and having a normal level of sales. New housing is probably the most impactful aspect of our model, because we actually factored this into the model. You can see that you've had 719 units have already been built in the last 3 years of multifamily alone. That's all of that brown lines you see in between 2015 and 2017. The number of single-family detached and attached have largely continued to be the same, playing with the same amount of units every year roughly. So that level of trend is built into the model through enrollment. We do take away that trend level of new multifamily developments so that we're not double counting or over counting the impact from these units, but we will see likely see an additional 1,789 units over the next 4 years if everything goes and is built as proposed. This is a map showing you just where the housing units have been built. You can see that largely in the Gladwin district, there's mainly single-family detached, and they're spread out through the most area. But a lot of multifamily development has been concentrated around the Lancaster Avenue, Montgomery Avenue corridors, specifically in Ardmore and Bryn Mawr. But there's also been significant developments, like, for instance, the Royal Athena along the Schuylkill River in Kinwood's catchment, as well as, like I said, mentioned the Maybrook on a former estate. Last year, there were 320 housing units constructed within the district, and the majority were in Penn Valley at the Maybrook development and St. George's condo. This is all of the upcoming development that you may see over the next 4 to 5 years. We have the development projection being over the next 4 years. The one I would like to take away from this particular map is that there are clusters of development within specific catchments. The Kinwood, there's a cluster within the Kinwood development mainly centered in and around the business park, which is trying to add mixed uses, one of which is residential, to its makeup. You can also see a small cluster in Narberth of smaller buildings within the neighborhood, mainly affecting the Belmont Hills catchment, as well as a cluster in and around Ardmore and Suburban Square that affects both Penn and Penn Valley. This is, I'm not going to go through every single development, it would take a while, but what I will say about this is that these are all the developments you saw on the last page with their predict their catchment area that they will be within, how many units, and the number of units built in specific years. And that's what we use to come up with the factors or the numbers down here of likely student enrollment. These factors over here are attributed to these specific developments and multiplied by these numbers. That's how we come up with a specific number. We usually, for most districts, just use the typical 0.06, which is the multifamily multiplier for most districts and the average building. But because Lower Merion is so unique in its attraction of families to multifamily, we've created varied ratios based on specific characteristics of development. If we know development has more 3-bedrooms apartments in it than is typical, then we will likely give it a higher ratio because it's more attractive to families. If they have certain amenities like playgrounds and stuff like that as well, we also do that. But after doing that entire exercise, we figured out that if we were to not control for the existing trend within the model, we would have 162 new students over the next 4 years as a result of housing development. Accounting for the existing development that's already built into the model through enrollment, we take out 90 and are left with around 72 students impact over 4 years. So, to explain just real briefly how we actually do our projection of students over the next 10 years, this is what we call a cohort progression model. Traditionally, it just measures the survival rate or progression of one grade to the next, from first grade in 1 year to second grade the next. And from that, you get a ratio either above 1 or below 1. Above 1 means that there is growth from year to year. Below 1 means that there is decline. So you can see that Lower Merion, when utilizing a traditional B to K, birth to kindergarten, kindergarten to first method, you can see that the ratios are mostly above 1, which means that Lower Merion is still in, even if it's a slower growth period than what we predicted in earlier studies, still in a growth mode. But however, we do it a little differently at the Planning Commission, mainly because we see high variability in the kindergarten enrollment and little correlation to the births 6 years prior, which is typically how we do it, because 6 years prior to a given kindergarten are the births that will affect that kindergarten. So what we do is we actually skip kindergarten and go right to first grade, because the reason that we do that is kindergarten in your district is half day, and there are a significant amount of private school options, and many parents will utilize that due to the complicated nature of having to try and keep a kid in half day kindergarten, especially if 2 parents work. So what we do is we realize, or we see a greater correlation between first grade to births 7 years prior, as opposed to kindergarten 6 years prior. So, and we further justify this by measuring the spread or the range of the progression rates. And when we look at that, you see that B to K and K to 1 have wider ranges, indicating that there's less correlation. We believe that B to 1 has a tighter correlation with where enrollment is based on births. We also do this at the individual elementary school level to build out our models. We utilize a mixed version of this, though. We don't just go straight B to 1 or B to K, K to 1. We did it based on how we've justified the previous district-wide model, which is based on the spread of ranges. So for some schools, we use the B to 1. For some, we use the B to K to 1. So for Kinwood, Gladwin, and Penn Valley, we used our non-traditional model. And for Belmont Hills, Marion, and Penn Wynne, we used our traditional model. Despite using the different models for the school buildings, they conform pretty closely, actually, to the district-wide totals. So we believe that this further confirms the validity of the model. Just to give you an example of what I mean when I say that kindergarten doesn't correlate so well with births as much as first grade does, you can see here that when looking at the colored lines, these are the lines that correlate to each other, the births in 2016-17 of 110, or in 6 years prior to 2016-17 affect that 82 person kindergarten, 82 child kindergarten. Now, the next year, those 82 kindergartners become 124 first graders. That's a very wide variation. We don't typically see that large of a jump, especially from kindergarten to first grade. If you go to the next year down, births declined 6 years prior to that to 92. Yet the kindergarten still has growth of 1 student. That doesn't make much sense considering the relationship that we viewed in the year before. So, and then if you extend it again back to first grade, it goes all the way back up to 110, similar to how 82 went to 124. So basically we're seeing a greater correlation between that 92 and 110, that 110 and 124, than we do between the births and the kindergartens. If you were to use the traditional birth to kindergarten method to project Gladwin, you would get 747 students next year. If you use the traditional B to 1, we projected at 734, so it's a 12, 13 student difference. Looking at the results district-wide, you can see that we had 8,660 students this current year registered in the school, and that through 2028-29, we're likely to see 9,365. That represents a net growth of 705 students. If you look at it from now to when it peaks, it will be peaks in 2026-27 at 9,390 students, and before coming down a bit at the end of the period. So this still represents a significant amount of growth. Of course, it's less than we predicted 3 years ago because we've already had 3 additional years of growth. And also, 2 trends in the district have changed slightly, and the amount of development and what type of development has also changed slightly, and what is getting built. So this always reinforms the model and changes and adjusts the overall district totals. If you look at it by school level, you can see that elementary school grows the least over the next 10 years, and this is to be completely expected because we're witnessing a lot of plateauing in that grade distribution. So it's expected that we will only see a limited amount of growth, or that the growth that the district will continue to see is not from the elementary school level, it's mainly through the original enrollment wave that I was talking about moving through the upper schools. So you can see that middle school will likely increase about 140, and that high school will increase 476. All of these have peaks before that final year, though, so they will increase more than that net change before the 10-year period, before coming down towards the end. Results looking at by elementary school, we can see that 3 of the schools peak, are projected to peak within the next year, while the other 3 are projected to peak within what we call the extended projection period, the second 5-year period. Belmont Hills, Gladwin, and Penn Wynne are likely to peak next year before coming back down at the end of the 10-year period at either 0 or negative. Gladwin looks like it's likely to lose 3 students. Belmont Hills, the most, will lose 23, while Penn Wynne will be a wash. Looking at the other 3 schools that are likely to grow or have net growth at the end of 10 years are Kinwood, Marion, and Penn Valley. This kind of holds too with the idea too that sales have been increasing specifically too in those catchments as well, kind of feeding maybe possibly into a greater housing churn and more students as a result of sales. But Marion is going to be your largest growth driver at 80 of all the elementary schools. And will likely peak within the beginning of that second year period. When looking at the middle school and high schools, you can see that the Bala-Kinwood Middle School achieves the lion's share of the growth between both middle schools. Over the next 10 years, they both peak in 2027-28 school year. And Bala-Kinwood will likely see about 100, whereas Welsh Valley will see 40. Harridan High School and Lower Marion, Harridan will likely see 122 new students by the end of the period, while Lower Marion will likely see 354. This is also done on the assumption, or on the basis of the assumption, that the Current average distribution for students who choose Harridan over Lower Merion in your choice zone will be favoring Harridan 55 to like roughly 45 Lower Merion. However, the switch is completely different this past year. So if that trend were to continue going forward, you're likely to see about 60 more students in Lower Merion over the 10-year period and 55 less roughly in Harridan. But if you were to remain at that 45-55, it would be this, or likely be this outcome. So the conclusions are generally that growth will continue overall. There are still many large grades in the district, and they will be causing growth in the upper schools. In addition to the attractiveness of the district, the private school enrollment continues to decline, multifamily continues to provide more students, and new residential construction is continuing. However, it does become more difficult to grow a sustained period such as the last 8 years, especially at the elementary school level, where large grades have become more consistent from K through 5th. Under the recommended scenario, we have the district growing by another 705 students over the next 10 years, with high school being hit the hardest at 476 students, middle school with 140, and elementary school growing only by 89 students. However, some schools may still have capacity issues based on where they're at now. I will take any questions.
Does anyone have questions now, or do you want to wait till after the other presentation? You can go ahead if you can go ahead if you have a question.
I actually thought it might be useful for the public to review how development happens in the district. So I don't know if you want to explain that briefly, or we should wait till after.
Development?
That's a big question.
Well,
You mean?
We don't control that, I think is the point
Yes,
that you're trying
exactly.
to.
Oh, that part. I was going to do
Yes.
that
Okay,
in between them, yes.
Okay.
Thank you for the presentation. I guess my question is, I think the word you use is confidence in your projections.
Yeah.
And I think, I just want to clarify, I believe you're very confident in the largest number, K to 12.
Yes.
You're a little less confident if you do just the elementary groups, that's 3,000, and your confidence gets even less if you do a particular building. Is that a true statement?
Yes, it is a true statement, and in every other presentation we've given, we usually point that out. I apologize. Yeah, the reason that elementary school predictions, by themselves are less efficable or less efficacious than the overall district model is mainly because of the smaller sample sizes. The smaller the sample size, the smaller the variation can cause a greater percentage difference. It's just not as efficable. But the overall district models, though, we have greater confidence in because of the larger number. Yeah.
Isn't it also fair, though, that you're more confident with students who already exist within the district as opposed to the kindergarten or the first grade who you're still making a guess at?
True.
Any other questions now? Go ahead, Diane.
Just quickly, can you explain how you allocate the students from the new construction into the schools?
Well, we know the years that they impact, and we know relatively how to spread them out evenly, and that's what we do through every single period in class. In the model, we essentially graft it on. It's added on to what the projection, what the essentially the algorithm gives us, right, or the projection itself gives us. So it's essentially grafted onto the model. So it has an impact in every specific year that it should have an impact.
Right, which makes your gross district-wide number much more accurate, but not knowing if Royal Athena brings 50 students, whether they're second graders or ninth graders.
Yeah.
Do you have an algorithm, or do you have a way
not to
of
predict that. No, not to predict that. What we can do, though, is we can understand what students specifically who say come from Royal Athena are in whatever specific grade now. So that's not going to give you a projection based on the future, of course. I mean, I could tell you that a second grader in Royal Athena this year will likely be a third grader from there next year. But other than that, I can't predict how many more like second graders might come in right to the district through Royal Athena.
So you don't have a sense of the percentage of students from this apartment building. If there's 30 students, 10 of them were in elementary school.
Well, we do know that. So that was what I was saying. We do know, like, up until all the data that we do have, the rosters that you give us to compare against the multifamily addresses, we know which students are second graders. We know, and so we know how we do, and we do separate it out in the overall report. You'll see it. There's an elementary school figure and a total figure, so that you know that you get a general sense of how many elementary school students are a part of that total figure. It should be next to it. If it's not, I can always supply it, because we do track that.
We're good to move on. We can ask more questions afterwards. We'll have the next presentation. Thank you for your presentation.
Just while we're switching over, what Mrs. Ackman was referencing is, as a public school system, we are in a major reactive mode. We don't have the ability, like a township, to create zoning rules that say you can't move here, you can't move there, or you can build there, you can't build there. We tend to react. We're not like a private school that can say, well, we've reached our limit, we're not going to take any more students. We have an obligation. So we're sort of at the whims of whatever trends take place. We can we can look at what's taken place in the past. We can't always predict what future behavior. Clearly, both, as you'll see, since I've seen both reports, you'll see that there's a slowing nature, and that's not a bad thing in terms of coming down a bit. However, our numbers are still predicted to go over, and we have to remember that our current schools are really challenged for space. We've still got classrooms who are on the cart, and art on the cart, music on a cart, and so forth, and so on. So we'll take a look at this. We've just begun. We haven't seen this much before the board in public, particularly at some specific schools. We're going to take a second look at Harriton because maybe we won't have to be as aggressive there in terms of building, but that's a maybe. Also, just let me point out that the current numbers and predictions for grades reflect current grade organizations. So this reflects fifth grade remaining in the elementary schools. So where you've got some even big numbers, we would hope to reduce some of those numbers with a third middle school. So I think we have to look at that. We also have to be cognizant of how we move to opening that school, and I'll talk more about that at another time. So, Mr. Sundell.
So I'm George Sundell. I'm the principal consultant at Sundance Associates, and of course, as you are all aware, we are here for multiple years and are once again presenting the New Year's findings. Been doing it for a lot of years, and I do not only enrollment projections but also redistricting studies for a lot of school districts. I like to say that it's not gazing into a crystal ball. Clearly, it is statistical analysis, and it's based on methods that are commonly accepted, at least throughout the United States. There's many reasons why we can modify enrollment projections. Here in Lower Merion, we are only concerned about modifications relative to the new housing. It is disruptive of the previous trends in the district. We also do like to look at things like public, parochial, cyber school enrollments. Also like to look at resales of existing housing. Both of those have been trending, but there is nothing disruptive of that trend, and therefore those factors, the changes in those trends, if they are ever so slight, are regular, and they are included in all the existing cohort rates. I think we all know where we're located, and we have a lot of schools to talk about, 10 different schools to evaluate. We do always project in the future a little bit by looking in the rearview mirror, if you will, to tell us where we've been. In the beginning of the 2000s, from 2000 to 2005, in that 5-year period, we were only increasing by 86 students per year. So if you can kind of like round that in your head, it was under 100 students per year. By the time we arrive at an increase period after 2008, which may well be tied into a recovery from housing after that housing recession. You can see that little dip in enrollment. It parallels the housing resales. But by the time we're into 2010 to 15, we can see that the annual rate of increase is around 225 students per year. After 2015, though, the period 15 to 18, growth has subsided. It is still increasing, but at a more moderate rate of only 106 students per year. That is interesting, and we want to ask that question as we move forward. How will that compare? Before we move off the slide, I just want to say again, beginning back in 2000, enrolled students were about 10% of the township, the two townships, population. By the time we're in that 2010-15 period where there was a lot of growth, we're up around 11 and 12% of population. Today we are over 13% of the population are enrolled in the school district. So we do see an increase there. Births have been a little bit erratic, and I have to say that in all the other years we have used geocoded births. This year I don't have geocoded births, so we moved the same proportion as in the past 5 years forward for this 6th year. If I could get my hands on geocoded birth, which I haven't been able to, this might change ever so slightly. But in general, the births have been decreasing for the last few years, ever since 14, 15. In general, though, we look at 6 years of birth when we do this analysis because they parallel 6 years of enrollment, okay? So that average is only for 2 fewer births per year. So the 6-year decrease is what is used in the projection. And if for the years that we don't know, when we get out to the 6th and 7th and 8th year, we're using an average of the 6 years, so that 557 number that you use is for births that we don't know yet. It is an average. This is the residential sales picture, and you can see if you look at the red and blue lines, one is the total district with Narberth included, but Lower Merion obviously has more significant impact, and you can see the pre-recession numbers were up around 800 and they went down to the 600s, came back to the 913s around 2013. I think there was a lot of pent-up demand that was met. It slacked off again and now has risen last year to 977, but this year only to 926. So we need to keep a tab, if you will, on how those residential sales will go, but we certainly know that they do impact on the enrollments. And there's a chart you'll see in the other report, in the full report, that tracks the change in enrollment with the change in residential housing and the change in permitting. We don't see as much of a correlation yet with permitting, but we can clearly see that the residential sales do track the enrollment in the school district. Residential permits has been quite high recently. As we know, historically, this is by the 2 separate municipalities. But what we ultimately come up with is what is it going to happen in the future? And we have 20 projects identified with over 1,900 units. That 1,900 count this year is up 300 from our count last year. And we find that all of this housing development is coming online within the next 4 years. We're doing a primary 5-year projection with a secondary 6 to 10-year projection. But the housing that is coming online that is known and permitted is for the next 4 years. In terms of occupancy, those 1,900 units are shown in red as to when they will be occupied. This comes from conversations with the developers of the properties themselves for their own expectations in terms of market absorption. What we see on this chart is that the last 3 years of permitting can be compared in red to the future occupancies. And this tells us briefly, if you will, that 60% of the housing is new. It's above our recent average. 40% of it has been starting to play out in our cohort survival rates. They've been impacting them, they've been changing them. So we make an estimate of how many students will come from that new housing over the next 4 years, but we're only going to do an addition to the projection of 60% of them. The rest have been built into the recent changes in cohort survival rates. And this again is a map, much like you've already seen, showing you where the housing development is taking place and what elementary district they would impact. Now, unlike the Planning Commission's study, which uses data that they have collected themselves for number of students from housing. I use what are called the Rutgers numbers, which are generally, they do these numbers and they're used almost nationwide. They do them for each state, and it is according not only to an apartment or a condominium or townhouses or single families, but also in each of those categories, whether they're 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or 3-bedroom. Again, I have that mix from the developers in conversation, and we can project. Here you see factors for SAC, that just means school-age children. It generally be slightly different, particularly if you take it out to 3 decimal places, with public school-age children. Now, I'm using the public school-age children number when I make my projections. So out of those 1,900 units, I'm getting 241 students. I am only applying as an overlay 145% of those students, that's 60%, to the standard projection. We had said that for the last 3 years, we've been increasing cohort survival rate because of the recent impact of the newest housing. So we see that despite the fact that school births is volatile, there is a 6-year trend of 2 fewer births per year. We use that 557 number, which is the 6-year average, for the 6 to 10 years out projections. We have how many students will come into the district, that we're using 60% of them, and we can say in what year they will be applied as an overlay. We talked about going from 10% from in 2000 to over 13% of population now. And we've been seeing that the population recently increased over 200 per year and is dropping recently to just over 100. So this 106 number, will it hold in our projections?
George, since your summary, you're coming pretty close in the same numbers.
We are.
If it's all right, I mean, the rest is unless there are some high points in the rest, given the lateness of the hour.
I have no problem. Well, you know, all I would like to say, I'd probably like for the public to talk about the presentation in terms of, in the written report, well, am I to assume the written report goes on your
The written
webpage?
report will be posted.
Okay. So I want you to just look at the first. I use bar graphs instead of lines, and you need to know that those are October numbers. Blue is historic. 5-year is the red is a 5-year projection. It is really accurate. The experts who go back and study them after they're made, say that it's plus or minus 1% per year. By the time you're already in that 5th year, it is plus or minus 5% in accuracy. The 6 to 10 year goes all the way out to plus or minus 10%. Not really worth using for a planning horizon. You just think about it, okay? I want you to be aware of that. And what we can see here is a significant rise also in the district enrollment. Elementary, I just want to say, it is the same. It's more stable. In your report, you get the charts that have everything by grade level and by year. And it's also, you have it for middle school and for high school also. Comparative, looking at the peaks that are, my peaks are also, yes, in the 2nd to the 4th years and the 5th years for my peak enrollments. And there are also enrollments for each of the individual elementary school. And here I bring your attention to the purple and gold lines that cross through those bars. The purple line was my projection last year. All of the projections are decreasing. They're less than what they were in the past for multiple reasons. And then there is a second line of gold for each chart that does show that option if you take the 5th grade out of these projections, what it would be, just again to help the school district in their analysis of that option. But I think we could probably, and then there was the summary. So, thank you.
No, thank you. I think that's an important point too, to take a look at it based on what we project to be the new, which I think gives some really nice, leeway in our elementary schools as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and we'll take any questions now, but Mr. Copeland, could you explain why we, first of all, do these, we've been doing these every year, and why we've been using two different consultants.
Well, I know the first year I was here was one of those years where we had a particularly big surprising bump. And that's when MCPC changed doing a progression, I think from a 6-year to a 3-year, or 3 to 6, I can't remember which way. But I have frankly done it in other school districts where we're planning large, major building constructions. I've gotten two demographers to sort of triangulate the data and have more than one planning, because as I said before, it's so difficult as a public school system to predict behavior. I mean, I used to jokingly say, if I could just get people to move where I ask them to, life would be simpler, but they've resisted that. And so to the point that I think someone on the board made, you can get a pretty good idea of where a certain group of your overall elementary school, but given boundary lines, a housing sales, burst in one particular neighborhood over one particular summer, and all of a sudden you're faced with what we do as partner school, but you can really get caught, by surprise. So we think adding the extra numbers helps us, at least so far.
Okay, are there any questions at this time? Go ahead, Diane.
I just have a couple questions. In both reports, there's generally one outlier a year in first grade, and then all the way through, because then it builds each year. So, for example, in the Sundance report, in 2019, first grade's projected at 128, where it's 96 and 89 on either side of it, and it goes as high as 112. But that 128 then compounds. The following year it's 134, and it's just that 1 year that stands out separate. And like each elementary school has a year. Kimwood's is 1920 and Marion's is 1920, but Penn Valley's is 2021. In the MCPC, Kimwood's 21, 22, Gladwin and Penn Valley are 20, but Marion's 2021. But it's the numbers are like way out of step with the numbers around it. So do you have any idea why that is and why it's so different? And it's not the same in both reports?
No, only because that is the real number by the cohort survival methodology. And it probably means, particularly when you're looking at an elementary school, that all things have combined like a perfect storm to make that year the biggest. If it's a grade level, I mean, you can follow it on the diagonal, and you ought to be able to see that growth based, again, the previous enrollment by the average cohort survival ratio, that new number by the next average. And it really is a statistical analysis, and there's a method. So it's never one reason for all the school districts, except that I know in both cases we're using strictly cohort survival method. The only thing that we're a little bit different on here is that birth to first grade survival rate rather than the birth to kindergarten. It's pretty much the biggest difference in our projection methodology.
So you have no theory on why? I mean, theoretically, you're both using the birth rate, the same birth rate.
They're close.
Or within 1 or 2, but you have drastically different first grade numbers.
We also have different housing adjustment numbers as well, too.
I'm sorry, you need to actually speak at the, you can just come up to the mic, it's fine, thanks.
There's a lot that goes into that too. Like I said, we have different housing adjustments as well too that affect those years and our models specifically, and they affect that first grade year differently specifically because it's the correlation. I'm drawing a correlation with births to that first grade. He's drawing one with kindergarten. And if you notice, right?
And we may also, and there might be a slight variation on when they're scheduled. Your conversation with the developer might have led you to believe it was 2 years from now, and I was told it was 1 year from now, but 5 years out, we're really looking, it's always growth, and we really should be planning for the 5 years out. That's the number that the district needs to look at in terms of its facilities analysis.
That's actually a good segue to my question, which is, can you just, based on, I know that we need further analysis, but based on what we've been seeing, the general trends, what schools are we concerned about at this point?
Well, up until before we got the reports, we were concerned with Marion and Gladwin. The numbers seem to suggest that Gladwin may not be as much of a concern. Marion absolutely is a concern for us. I've talked about this in committees, but I don't think I've talked about it in terms of a full board meeting. But we are considering, as we open the third middle school, to open it in its first year of only grades 5 and 6, so that no one would be coming out of an existing middle school who was already in grades 6 or 7. And then eventually adding 7th grade and eventually adding the 8th grade. However, if we do that, Marion will continue to have significant numbers because they won't have gotten enough kids out of the building in enough time. And so we are considering whether we need to make some sort of remedial plan at Marion for sure.
Thank you. Are there any other questions at this time? Go ahead.
Were you surprised by the number of school-age children coming out of our multifamily developments, both currently and your trend? I mean, how does that compare to other places that you've done these kind of studies? Thank you.
Yeah, you can.
I'll answer that. Sure. Like I said, I think I mentioned it too in the presentation, is that definitely your district has a greater pressure on multifamily to absorb some of that school district, like incoming population. And like I said, the only way that we know that is through what we see. I can tell you anecdotally that I've seen similar apartment buildings in other municipalities or school districts not give me half the amount of students that some of yours do. And then, like I said, the only thing I can hypothesize about that is because of the exceptional nature of your school district, and just also to how tight housing can be, and how tight housing has been in terms of sales and availability of homes too. That's the other thing too. The last couple of years, the market's been there's been a lot less inventory on the market as well. So that kind of pent up demand pushes more families possibly into apartment buildings if they can't find affordable alternatives.
I will say in terms of a compare and contrast statement, be aware that Montgomery County Planning Commission uses numbers that they have generated through on-site surveys and detailed information that they have. And I would reconfirm, I use the Rutgers numbers generated by this rather huge program that they run for each state, where they annually update these kind of numbers by type and bedroom counts based on the every 10-year census. So my numbers are from 2010, and they are from Rutgers, and they are not your numbers. And over the years, in the 4 years we've been doing this jointly, my numbers for students from new housing has always been a little bit higher than their number, and this year it continues that way.
So one could make the conclusion based on these projections and these numbers that because we have such a strong school district, the apartments that are built in our district are more likely to produce students going to our schools than apartments built perhaps in places where the public schools aren't as good.
You're definitely a district of choice, no question.
Yes, exactly. And like I said, that exerts pressure on those units.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Deborah. Okay.
I am just curious if I'm looking or if I've heard it correctly or incorrectly. Dan, you mentioned that the increase for elementary school between now and 2028 will only be about 89?
Yeah, net
Okay.
gain.
Now, and then George, Mr. Sundell, and Mr. Fiorina, you have on your slide number 23 that the elementary enrollment over the next 5 years is 196 students, which is more than 100 more than his. So I'm curious where those kids are where they're coming from? Is it a birth number? Are they moving in?
Part of it is that I'm overlaying about 20 new students per year above his number, so some of it's there. Some of that is from the difference in the way that we're doing the birth to kindergarten or first grade number.
Okay.
It's the reason why you really kind of like do estimates. Mine is kind of like a by the book with the national methodology, and they approach it from a more knowledgeable Montgomery County planning point of view.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Okay, at this time, I'm going to move to approve, I'm going to need a motion to approve the attached minutes from the Board of School Directors meetings, November 19th, regular business board, December 3, reorg, as well as accepting the following committee meeting minutes, November 28th, communications, December 4, curriculum, December 7, policies, December 13th, facilities and purchasing, and December 14th, finance. Do I have a motion to approve? Thank you. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion passes, and I will turn it over to you, Mr. Copeland.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. Just some highlights as we have our last board meeting of the year. Congratulations to Lower Merion High School quarterback Matt O'Connor. Not only did he set the school's passing record this season, he was recently selected as a Mini Max Award winner for the state of Pennsylvania by the Maxwell's Football Club. Students from the Harriton High School Environmental Club will be featured on the Lower Merion Township Television Channel's environmental show. The students discussed recycling and other sustainability efforts at their school and showed off their aquaponic garden. The segment was shot by students from Harriton TV. We're also very proud of students from Bala-Cynwyd Middle School who supported the Philadelphia Interfaith Hospitality Network's Empty Bowl project. The students handcrafted and donated ceramic bowls to support the project, which helped raise $40,000 towards ending hunger and homelessness in the city. And finally, I'm pleased to announce the upcoming Martin Luther King Jr. Afternoon of Service. It will be held at Lower Merion High School cafeteria on the afternoon of Friday, January 18th from 1 to 3 o'clock. Student organizations and our HSAs will be hosting a variety of service projects. This event is open to everyone in the community and is appropriate for all ages.
No.
I'm sorry.
Is this where we're going to ask the solicitor to?
Yes. Can you please go ahead and read your statement?
Talk about the law.
Just for anyone that didn't see it in the newspaper, very pleased to announce that on December 11th, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court unanimously reversed the decision of the Commonwealth Court in the Arthur Wilk budget litigation. Originally, the district had appealed the August 29, 2016 order of the Court of Common Pleas judge that had partially rolled back a tax increase. The district appealed to the Commonwealth Court to hear the merits of the case. The Commonwealth Court instead, at Mr. Wilk's request, dismissed the appeal for what it perceived to be a procedural basis upon which to throw out the lawsuit. But the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has unanimously reversed that decision. So the district will be pleased to go back in front of the Commonwealth Court to argue the case on the merits.
Thank you. Sorry, you're up.
Okay. Under Human Resources, the administration recommends that the Board of School Directors approves the attached Human Resources actions HR 1 through HR 5.
Are there any questions? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Under Educational Services, the administration recommends that the Board of School Directors approves the attached overnight trips as listed. Also,
Go ahead.
the administration recommends that the Board of School Directors approves the attached contract with Dr. Lynn Dorfman for the 2018-19 school year, in the not-to-exceed amount of $13,000. And finally, the administration recommends that the Board of School Directors approves the attached contract with Dr. Bennett Kalick for professional development in December 2018 to a not-to-exceed amount of $8,600.
Okay, before we go ahead and do that, I'm just going to I quickly skipped over Dr. Van Lynch reading the curriculum. Do you want to do that first, and then we'll go ahead, because...
Do you want to vote on these?
Because you're reporting on these, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah, that's okay. Why don't you go ahead and do that, and then we'll just have to vote. Thanks. Sorry, that was my fault.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. And I'll provide a somewhat abbreviated report given the hour. The Curriculum Committee met on Tuesday, December 4th at 8:30 in this room, 8:30 a.m. in this room. We reviewed one contract by for Dr. Bennett Kalick, who will continue her work with the district on the strategic plan, implementation, and transformative learning, providing professional development for teachers and administrative staff. Again, I want to remind the public that all curriculum meeting materials and presentation documents can be found on the district website in board docs under the curriculum meeting tab, as well as in the education supplementary board meeting section if you want additional detail. Our main presentation topic on Tuesday was on updates from the Commonwealth and Keystone Achievement and Growth Data reports. Dr. Everslag updated the committee on district-related achievement and growth data, and the presentation was organized under three main headings: building capacity for data use, updates from the Commonwealth, and a close look at Keystone data. I'm just going to provide again, high-level updates. Updates from the Commonwealth included a reduction from 3 weeks to 2 weeks of the testing window, as well as a reduction from 9 testing days in 2018 to 7 in 2019. Additionally, the Keystone exam will no longer be a graduation requirement since the passage of Senate Bill 1095. Students will still be required to take the Keystone. However, if proficiency is not achieved, students will be supported in obtaining proficiency by the district. The Future Ready PA Index was presented and reviewed, and this metric takes the place of what was formerly known as a school performance profile, a score that had been used by PD to evaluate schools and districts over the past few years. We rounded out our meeting with the discussion of Keystone exams presented by Dr. Everslag and various reflections regarding next steps for the district regarding some of the data that was presented and analyzed. In January, we will have presentation on PSSA data, and our next meeting will be Tuesday, January 8th, 2019, 8:30 a.m. in this room. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Van Lynch. So just to remind everybody, we're taking B through D in one motion. So are there any questions? No. Is there a motion to approve? Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? The motion passes.
Student Services. Administration recommends that the Board of School Directors approves the student services items as listed, agreements for students receiving non-district educational services, SS1 through SS11.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? The motion passes. I'm now going to ask Mr. Driscoll to give us a update on the December 13th Facilities and Purchasing Committee meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. We met this past Thursday at 8:30 in this room, and we began, as usual, by reviewing and recommending for approval the list of bills. We then moved on to review and recommend for approval the district contracts. The one with Lynn Dorfman, not to exceed $13,000. She will work with 4th and 5th graders on text-dependent analysis, and Bennett Kalick at $8,600. In addition, what Dr. Van Lynch said, also I think she's working with implementing the new elementary report card in addition. We moved on to the purchasing report. The first items was Starlight for $39,294.56. This is to install a projector at the Kinwood Gymatorium. This will bring Kinwood in line with the rest of the elementary schools that have such equipment. We then did a contract with MA Bright Bill Bodyworks for $377,460. This is to purchase 3 72-passenger diesel buses to add to the fleet. Another contract was MA Bright Bill Body Works again, $1,289,880. This will purchase 8 72-passenger compressed natural gas buses to replace 8 other similar buses that have reached the end of their useful lives. Third, next contract, again with MA Bright Bill Body Works, $219,460. Purchase 2 48-passenger diesel buses to replace 2 other similar buses that have reached the end of their useful lives. And then the final contract was with Don Brown Bus Services, $233,260. Purchase 4 30-passenger gasoline buses to replace 4 other buses that have also reached the end of their useful lives. The contract for the projector was awarded through a state-run consortium bidding process, and the bus purchases were all executed through district-run bidding processes. The next item was contracted drivers. We reviewed the names of drivers being provided by the contracted bus services the district uses to supplement our fleet per Pennsylvania law. The next contract was with Fleetio at $9,180 per year for 3 years. This is a new web-based software package that helps the district keep records on maintenance done to the bus fleet and some other district operational vehicles. The district's current provider for this service is being replaced. Next contract is with VMware for $31,543. This is the annual maintenance and support for the district's virtual servers. Next contract is with Barracuda for $11,191.40. This is a new file system that allows students, faculty, and staff to access files on the district network. The current provider for this service is discontinuing this support this month, so we need to find a new provider. Next contract was Cisco, $304,665.19. This is the annual maintenance for Cisco network devices, phone and voicemail systems, and network monitoring equipment district-wide. The next contract is with Element Environmental Solutions, not to exceed $45,700. This is an individual work order for this company to provide scoping and bid documents, assist with construction phasing and oversight, and some storage tank removal and soil remediation. At 1860, there are currently some underground oil tanks and possibly contaminated soil. This company will help the district in getting those hazardous materials removed before construction of the new school can begin. Next contract is Gilbert Architects, not to exceed $122,800. Gilbert Architects will provide documents to assist the district with scoping out, permitting, and bidding for demolition of the buildings in 1860, as well as providing some demolition oversight. We then reviewed and recommended for approval a change order at Harriton High School, the stormwater basin, an increase of $6,837.53. We need to install taller light pole bases and install underground conduits for security cameras on the parking lot over that basin. That closed out the voting items, and we moved on to just informational, where we discussed the proposed baseball and softball diamonds at 912 Spring Mill Road, and where the various teams for the new middle school would practice and play games among the fields using those that would be built at 1860, Montgomery Avenue, those built at 912 Spring Mill, and at Gladwin Elementary. We concluded the meeting, and the next facilities and purchasing meeting will be January 24th, 8:30 in this room.
Thank you very much, Mr. Driscoll. Mr. Orlando?
Sure. Under the Business Office and Finance section, I'd like to take items B through G in one motion. The administration recommends that Board of School Directors approve the following action items: approve the list of bills, approve the financial report for November 2018, accept the Rayner and Company financial statements and single audit report for Lower Merion School District for the year ending June 30, 2018. Accept with pleasure pursuant to policy 702 the following donations: $1,000 from Jess Westfall towards the Lower Merion School District Arts or Athletic Programs, $200 from an anonymous donor to cover outstanding student lunch debts, a Gaga pit from the Penn Valley 5th grade class of 2019 to Penn Valley Elementary School in the amount of $5,187.34. Confirm the debt service fund transfer and the capital projects transfer as set forth in the district's 2018-19 general fund budget, and declare surplus items as surplus property and authorize the disposition thereof.
Okay, thank you. And on behalf of the entire board, I'd like to thank Mr. Westfall, the anonymous donor, and the 5th grade class at Penn Valley for their donations. We really appreciate it. Are there any questions? Do you have a motion to approve? Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? The motion passes.
Under the Facilities and Operations section, I could take items A through J in one motion. Items B through J were reviewed at the facilities as noted in Mr. Driscoll's report. The administration recommends the Board of School Directors approve the following action items. The resolution to authorize the acquisition of property owned by the Foundation of Islamic Education, Inc. at 1860 Montgomery Avenue, Villanova, PA. Award the contracts to purchase and install a gymatorium projector at Kenwood Elementary School, and award bids for the purchase of 17 school buses. Authorize transportation contractors to use drivers and aides as in the attached list. Approve the individual work order with Element Environmental Solutions for professional services for not to exceed amount of $45,700. Approve the individual work order with Gilbert Architects, Inc. for professional services for not to exceed amount of $122,800. Approve the E-Plus Barracuda quote in the amount of $11,191.40. Approve the E-Plus VMware quote in the amount of $31,543. Approve the quote from Presidio for Cisco SmartNet and Source Fire support renewal in the amount of $304,665.19. Approve the Fleeto Advanced Plan annual subscription for 3 years at annual cost of $9,180. And approve the change orders for repairs at the Stormwater Basin 2.1 at Harrington High School.
Thank you, Mr. Orlando. Are there any questions or comments? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? The motion passes. At this time, I'd like to ask Ms. Robinson for a report of the Policy Committee of December 7th.
Thank you. This is, I hope I have the right minutes.
Is it December 7th?
Yes, it is December 7th. I think so. Second readings. We had policy 150, No Child Left Behind compliance for repeal. This policy has become outdated as we adopt every child or every student succeeds act for compliance. Policy in AR 263, surveys, student surveys, they're new. They authorize the data gathering via surveys of students while protecting their and their families' privacy. Let me just make sure that I have the right second ratings.
That's right. That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Cross-references to other policies governing other types of student surveys are listed at the end of the policy. Policy in AR 257, Title I, Parent-Family Involvement, provides accessibility accommodations, including giving migrant families who have limited English proficiency, a disability, or limited literacy, or racial and ethnic minority backgrounds, communications, information, and school reports to families in language that they can understand. Policy in AR 209, health and dental examinations, has been updated for current practice and language. Health and dental exams at specific grade levels are required by state law to ensure that the learning potential of each student is not lessened by a remediable physical disability and to protect the school community from the spread of communicable disease. And then we had policy in AR 357, 457, 557, outside employment and outside business interests. The change to this policy in AR to include disclosure relating to solicited student trips that are not district approved, or solicited and funded by an outside agency, and the district personnel attend as chaperones or team leaders. In addition to several other guidelines, no meetings may take place on district property, and no posting or distribution of non-district trip information may be provided during school. First readings, we had policy in AR 210, use of medication. The change to this policy in AR is to include medical marijuana as an approved form of medication as prescribed by a doctor for specific conditions approved by the Pennsylvania Department of Health. In addition, Narcan will now be held at all schools in case of an emergency to reverse the effects of opiate-related drug overdoses. Policy in AR 246, 346, 446, 546, prohibited harassment by and of students, has been updated to terminology and best practices, and to reflect that this policy applies at and away from school, the training provided, and reporting procedures. Then we went over 2 administrative regulations, assignment of students within the district, attendance area exceptions. This regulation was amended last month and brought back just for wording. It's being amended to state that in addition to the process provided in the AR, review of requests submitted outside of the established timeframes of April 1st through May 15th of the prior year will be considered. Will consider the support available for the affected students at the current school. Absent extraordinary circumstances, the school involved shall be afforded time to intervene and work with the student or families involved. Adoption of curriculum materials was reviewed to revise language into updated attachment A, a letter going out to parents regarding online privacy rules and policies of Lower Merion. That's as far as we got in the agenda, and the next meeting is on January 11th. Happy holidays.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Okay, so we need to vote on the second readings, which have been discussed at a minimum of 2 policy committees, and usually quite a bit more. So we're going to vote on Policy 150, No Child Left Behind, for repeal. Policy AR 263, Student Surveys, which is new. Policy 257, Title I, Parent Family Member Involvement. Policy AR 209, Health and Dental Examinations. And Policy AR 357, 457, 557, Outside Employment and Other Business Interests. So are there any questions? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? The motion passes. And then for a first reading, the following policies were reviewed. Policy 210, use of medication, and Policy 246, 346, 446, 546, prohibited harassment. And that will be brought back to the Policy Committee for further discussion. Do we have a report from the Communications Committee? Ms. Ackman, thank
Yep.
you.
We met on November 28th. We had a pretty extensive review of many items going on in the district. We, first of all, we contacted the people who had, emailed the district about Stoneleigh to let them know our decision that we would not be trying to take Stoneleigh. So we did reach out to everyone who reached back out to us with that news. There was some pretty active early dismissal and late opening communications, and now all of that information is on the website for kindergarten. Our updated board highlights, which are emailed to the public and the school community the day after each board meeting, have been very well received. The parking at Harriton on North Ethan Avenue has been the subject of ongoing communications. Mr. Copeland has had some nice community outreach meetings with our local and regional clergy about SAGE and our tutoring initiatives. Also, Mr. Copeland and the administration hosted a brunch with alumni from the class of 2017 to get feedback, which was really valuable, related to AP classes. There was a special education student there who talked very positively about the services they had received and life skill classes while here in the district. The students recommended more alliances with colleges via clubs and more specialized college counselors related to that could help students pursue military academies, art schools, and conservancies. So a little bit of a more specialized advice for students who want to pursue those kinds of options for college. There was an update shared with the committee and the public about the school safety task force. There's going to be a conference in the spring that will bring together students from both high schools around leadership and gender issues. It's going to be very student-led and will continue, I think, to be a great outlet for student discussion and leadership. For our Blackbaud new software, we're currently building donation and membership pages for the Foundation Alumni Association, and we're looking into new software to support the Community Resource Network. We talked about our MLK Day of Service plans, which were already mentioned earlier tonight. Sending out some additional communication about the impact to the change in the Keystone requirements and some of the legislation in Harrisburg in terms of student academic requirements. And finally, we discussed organizing a legislative forum in the spring with our delegation locally at the state level and in Washington, and hopefully involving student clubs and making students part of the forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. At this time, I'm going to offer audience recognition on any item. I think do you have a list of people or? Okay, so I see a number of students here who look familiar. So I opened up public comment at the beginning for you as a courtesy. And so I'm going to ask that unless you're speaking about an issue other than Mr. Harrington, that you allow other people now to give their comments, and I will be happy to talk to you after the meeting with all of the students who would like to continue the conversation. So at this time, if there are members of the public who would like to speak on any issue, they can speak on Mr. Harrington as well, if that's what the adults want to speak on. I should say the non-students, so our students are also adults. So if you would like to come up and speak on any topic, please come in, please come up to the front, and sign in with Ms. LaPera. We need to know your name and where you live in the district. You have to sign in first. You can. With you? Yes, I apologize, I'm not being clear. If anybody would like to speak, can you please sign in now, and then we'll close the list. So if you would like to speak, please come sign in. You have to be somebody who lives in the district or is a taxpayer in the district. You get 3 minutes. And then we'll just let everybody sign up, and then we'll call your names. I apologize. I thought you already, I got confused. I'm so used to seeing you here that I got confused. You absolutely can speak. I apologize. It's been a long evening, so yes. So, Denise, do you want to start calling the first people up?
David, you can go ahead and get started. Oh, Harris, I'm so sorry, Harris, thank you for that, I couldn't say it.
So if you can come up to the mic, yes, and just state your name and generally where you live in the district.
My name's Harris Wildstein. I am the president of the Renfield Community Association. I basically represent 66 homeowners that are contiguous to 912 Spring Mill Road, which we know that you are acquiring and developing. And we have concerns. We met with Jim Lill on Friday, vocalized some of our concerns. And our biggest concern is that we be included in the process of how that piece of ground is going to be developed. And we have very specific concerns about safety, security, traffic, property values, and I think it's important that what we do is have a relationship that is harmonious rather than adversarial in moving the process along. We're not here to tell you that we want to stop you. We're here to tell you that we want to all walk away happy with the end result. And for that reason, we would like to be included in whatever goes on, in particular with 912 Spring Mill. And we think we can give constructive input, and we think we can support it if it works.
If it's done right.
And if it's done right.
I'm David Hoffman. I own 60 acres between Morris Road Extension and Mount Pleasant Road. And I recently, 2 years ago, did a 43-acre conservation easement. So while you escaped one with Stoneleigh, you've entered another one. And so your playing fields are within about 50 yards from my conservation easement. And I spent a great deal of money creating a place of peace and quiet. And I also pay a great deal of taxes to support the school district. So it's finding out that something happened 4 months before in your neighborhood doesn't really feel
and we
very proper.
Yeah, we understand that the seller wanted to.
I'm sorry, only one of you speaks at a time, so we assumed you were finished, so you've moved on to the second speaker already then.
We're representing the same.
We're representing the same
But only
interests.
one of you gets to speak at a time.
Okay, sorry.
You can go ahead and finish, sir.
I lost my thought. Anyway, our concerns are that we be included in the process. It's very important. I think we need your support, you need our support. We're trying to make this as harmonious as possible. We are available pretty much anytime. I am available. David's not quite as available as I am. Most of the other people who have signed up are here for the same reason. They can vocalize their interests as well. And I appreciate your consideration in this thing. I'm not going to go into our needs right now because I think this is not the forum. And I did speak to Jim at length at the meeting about some of them, but we'd like to get, a little bit more concrete
Okay, well,
planning.
thank you very much. We appreciate you coming here. I know that you met with Jim Lill, I think it was a few days ago.
A couple days ago.
And Amy Buckman, and we, look forward to working with you in a harmonious fashion. So, thank you.
Great, thank you.
I guess the real question is who.
Can you just, I'm sorry, because we have to do this, can you just state your name again and?
David Hoffman.
Okay, thank you.
Villanova. I'm on the other side of the property, we're on two sides of the playing fields you're suggesting, are Renfield, and I own, besides the two houses on Morris Road that are off of Spring Mill, I own most of the rest of the property except for a woman who had to go because she couldn't stay awake. She owns the house in the back. But we would like to really understand who exactly we can work with to understand precisely what is being planned so that we can understand whether we're going to be peaceful neighbors or adversaries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
David?
Thank you. I'm David Van Adelsberg. I live in Villanova. I represent a group of abutting neighbors, and this is a bipartisan group of neighbors who has a very similar interest to yours, which is to figure out how to address the capacity issues which were presented earlier, which don't seem quite as severe as they may have appeared in the past, and finding solutions for our kids and for our neighbors. I don't want to get into a lot of detail. We've done a fair amount of research. I have a background in adult learning. I'm published on the subject. I know a great deal about the correlation between buildings and education. There's some very interesting work that was done at Columbia on this subject, also about class size and education and the outcomes. The economics in Lower Merion are astounding, candidly, and as a long-standing resident, it's surprising to me. What I just saw here was the approval of something in excess, or I didn't add it all up because it wasn't accessible online, but all of the items which you approved this evening, probably are close to $30 million, there wasn't a single question, not one. So I'm not as familiar with your process. We're interested, like the gentleman that just spoke before me, in being amiable about this process. But the idea of transporting children 1.5 miles by bus, to play on a field that isn't close proximity, it isn't associated use, and it's just not logical. So there are lots of solutions. Pennsylvania offers a scholarship program to allow kids whose parents are interested to bridge the gap in order to send them to private schools. That takes a bit of the capacity out. My son attended Gladwin Elementary School in a double-wide trailer, and I can report that he successfully graduated Dartmouth Colleges and having a great career. It did not affect his education. So I'd like to leave my card. We're interested in having a collaboration with real decision makers, and there's a great opportunity for the community, which is inclusive of the kids and the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. I will just say that our process is committee meetings in which every contract is reviewed with the subset of the board for 3 hours before. So by the time it gets here, it has been reviewed and there has been the opportunity for all of us to ask questions. So if we had a meeting that actually reviewed every contract during the business meeting, we would be here even later. And as well, I will state that the conversation about how to deal with the enrollment growth and the possibilities for different configurations of schools and increasing class sizes and stuff has been going on for multiple years at this point through multiple meetings. And I appreciate that there may be a reason that your interest has peaked at this point. But I can assure you that there have been numerous discussions over multiple years over how to address the enrollment issues. Having said that, I think we are all always open to having continued conversations with community members.
Brian, and then we have Russell, and then Ben.
Brian Newmark, I live in Villanova. I'm the house directly across the street from 912 Spring Mill Road. And I've got two issues. One would be the economic impact of building school fields at a cost of possibly $12 million and an ongoing loss of property taxes of approximately $80,000, plus the ongoing costs of maintaining the fields. And it's my understanding that these fields are going to support 7th and 8th grade baseball and softball. And that's a massive investment for all of the taxpayers of Lower Merion to make for a sport that potentially accommodates about 10 kids per season for softball and about 10 for baseball. So I question the wisdom of the expenditure on behalf of the school district. Secondly, there's a way to make that property an enhancement to the community, and then to the 75 or 100 homes that surround that piece of property, and there's ways to make it a detraction. I'm highly concerned as someone who pulls out on Spring Mill Road at that very spot multiple times a day. The conversation that we had the other day suggested there's going to be 20 parking spots, and I wonder where's the overflow parking going to go? People can't park on Ridgewood because you'd need to park an ambulance on Spring Mill Road to pick up the bodies as they tried to walk across the street. It's 40 miles an hour, and the average speed limit's probably closer to 50 or 60 on most days. So parking across the street's not a possibility. Parking on Spring Mill Road's a possibility. Some of my neighbors and I joke that maybe we'll sell parking spots at our home to offset some of the loss of property value. So I ask that the school board, when you're considering this, first consider the wisdom of the expenditure, and secondly, how can you make an enhancement to the community, make it more of a park, as opposed to 2 baseball fields, which add nothing to the community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Russell, Paul?
Hi, my name is Russell Paul. I live in Renfield, and I'm on the board of the homeowners community association there. Harris Wildstein spoke. He is the president of our board, so he spoke on behalf of the entire Renfield community. But I just have a couple of questions as a resident of the area. I wanted to know what studies have been done before 912 Spring Mill Road was purchased or are planned to be done, including an economic study on the loss of property values and how that would impact the tax base of the community and the school board itself, and whether or not there has been any studies on the traffic patterns in the area and how that will be impacted by your decision to purchase 912 Spring Mill Road, and whether there's been a study on the effects of the safety of the children in the area who may be walking in the area or walking home as, and I believe Spring Mill Road is a state road, Route 320, as trucks and large vehicles and cars barrel down that road at over 60 miles an hour sometimes. So have any of these studies been done, or do you plan to do them in the near future? Can you answer that question now?
Thank you for your comments. We'll be answering questions at the end, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ben.
Ben Feldman, Gladwin. Members of the school board, my name is Ben Feldman. I'm currently a college freshman, but I graduated from Harridan in June. In fact, I served as the secretary of the Harridan Student Council last year and had the honor and privilege of helping to organize the production of Mr. Harridan 2018. Though I know the cameras have already departed and most of my fellow former classmates already have, I think it's my duty to talk about the issue from the way I see it. I fear I'm going to have to disagree with many of my former classmates and many of my friends and speak in favor of the name change today. Keep in mind, I am and always have identified as a male, and I don't have a direct stake in this issue since I no longer attend Harridan High School. Still, I do view it as my responsibility to give my opinion on one aspect of this debate. It's commonly asserted that Mr. Harridan used to be about mocking all-female beauty pageants, an important feminist message. But I can tell you that Mr. Harridan today is not the same show it was 11 years ago. In my experience as secretary, I recall that on ad days, the days in which the student council would solicit ads for the playbill, we would explicitly tell students not to refer to the show as a beauty pageant, but to refer to it as a competition for upperclassmen boys or talent show. This troubled me the more that I thought about it, because if we're really doing this show to mock female beauty pageants, then shouldn't we be parroting our message as a mock of these beauty pageants? Why shouldn't we be proudly explaining the nature of our show? Why do we tell people that Mr. Harridan used to be about this message? Why were most of the speeches I heard today in the past tense? To me, the answer is because it's no longer what Mr. Harridan is about. Frankly, I'm glad that this change has occurred in the last 11 years. Firstly, mocking all-female beauty pageants with an all-male one inherently runs the risk of alienating gender non-conforming students by framing it as an issue of equality between the two genders, not equality among all genders. Secondly, therefore, we should celebrate the true mission of today's show. It brings the school together. It's representative of our culture, our spirit. It's so much more than a mock of all-female beauty pageants, and I see no reason why anyone should be excluded from that. Yes, anyone is technically allowed to compete in Mr. Harridan, and there may not be a single student today who feels deterred from trying out because of the name. But make no mistake, language matters, and it may make a huge impact in the future. At my college, we celebrate the fact that women have been allowed to study there since 1870. I tell you this because Mix Harridan, if we value inclusivity, can bring us pride for decades to come. Should the administration use this as a stepping stone to further education about gender, especially in health class? Absolutely. Should there have been more dialogue with students? For sure. In fact, that seems to be about 90% of the outrage that I've been hearing. And there are a host of other classic whataboutisms. I accept that. But I wanted to speak today to tell you that at its core, Mr. Harridan today is much more than a mock of all-female beauty pageants. And that's a good thing.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate you coming back to enlighten us.
Sure, I can speak to some of the issues. We've got 4 secondary schools in the district, and right now, because of the lack of land and the lack of playing field, none of the secondary schools can experience their sports contiguous to the school. It's that difficult. So at every one, whether it's Harrington High School, whether it's Lower Merion High School, whether it's Welch Valley or Bala Cynwyd, for some sports, they've had to leave the location. We're that desperate. So transportation is more of what we have to do than what we want to do. In terms of the number of students on a team, while they may not field as many kids as the high school, we believe that we'll get far more than 10 or 11 kids out there. We generally have 2 teams, as a matter of fact, for each. So we still are going to have a field space issue. In terms of the parking, we really probably have far more parking than we need, and we measured that against, because of when the teams play. They play, right after school. We don't get a lot of parents who are able to leave work to come to the games. That's unfortunate, but we haven't experienced a problem with that kind of parking. In terms of the traffic patterns, we have not done a traffic pattern evaluation of that area. Remember, we're only going to be driving students over there in a bus after school, and picking them up and taking them. So buses are on transporting students on Spring Mill all the time, and this will be off time, not during the significant part of the traffic pattern. So.
Okay, and just before we move on, I just want to say, first of all, that I do appreciate all of the neighbors near 912 Spring Mill having concerns and questions. I know that the school board of the school district is looking to work with you to do our best to address those concerns, and we will, continue to make sure that that you all are included in the process of figuring out what we're going to be doing there as well. So I just wanted to say that. I realize it's a long meeting and a long night, so I appreciate that everybody waited patiently to the end of the meeting to express your comments, and I just wanted to say that. Mr. Roos, can you do the Sunshine Act for us, please?
Yes. The board met in executive session on December 3rd and December 17th, both to discuss real estate matters. Also, tonight's meeting on the 17th was to discuss a litigation claim.
Okay, our upcoming meetings are Monday, January 14th is an education meeting. Monday, January 28th is a regular business board meeting. We have committee meetings, January 8th, curriculum, January 11th, policy, January 24th, facilities and purchasing. And I'd like to wish everybody a happy winter break and a safe break. And with that, we are adjourned. And if there are students who'd like to speak with me, I'm happy to do so. Thanks.